Part of growing up is accommodating and dealing with change. Change mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and as we'll see in this video, quite frankly, in the world around you, your environment. Circumstances in my life have me currently reflecting on change and how I deal with change. Certain aspects of getting older are difficult to deal with, and change has been one of those things that's been more difficult for me to contend with as I've gotten older. I'd like to believe that I'm better than that, but I'm not. I get nostalgic and get in these fits of wanting to reminisce about things in the past. There's nothing wrong with that. Only that when we think in those sorts of mind frames, it's very easy to make ourselves ungrateful for the things we currently have. Let's look at it like this. There is an epidemic of people in my generation who suffer from Peter Pan syndrome, who don't want to grow up, don't want to mature, and don't want to take responsibility for things in their lives. I don't want this to become some sort of Jordan Peterson talk or something. It's something that I've noticed. Maybe it's me, maybe it's the state of my life based on the experiences I've had, the things that I've gone through. I don't want to fall into the fallacy of thinking I'm better than other people, or that somehow I'm more emotionally equipped to deal with things because of what I've gone through, but I can honestly say that I've seen the growth in myself. You know, that's not even what I planned on talking about. It's kind of off subject, but I'm doing this off the cuff. I don't want to be scripted. I just want to talk from the heart. I'll show pictures of some artworks and explain the connection between what I'm talking about and the artworks. That's what I like to do on my channel. So I hope you enjoy. My name is Charles Hancock, and this is Charles Hancock Creations. What I really want to talk about is how rapid the change has been in the environment around me, especially in the city I live in. I came to Raleigh in 2010, 11, somewhere around there, and it was already in the midst of a growth boom. Interstate migrants, people leaving their jobs in Ohio or Connecticut, carpetbaggers, if you will, from the north coming back down to the south to build a new home. There are benefits that come with that, obviously, but not everything's always positive. When I first came to Raleigh, it still had the feeling of a small American college town. NC State is right down the street, but quickly, large industry and corporations started moving in. In the midst of Raleigh's growth and change, I was growing and changing at that point in my life as well. Kind of back to the Peter Pan syndrome thing, you often will find that a lot of people in my generation may have matured, or what we would consider matured from a psychological standpoint, later in life. In my parents' generation, the boomers, they grew up to a certain point and realized that they were going to be growing into the adult world. And the adult world came with its own set of challenges, just like it does with any other adolescent. You're going to be expected to take care of yourself, pay your own bills, have some sort of trade or join a union or something, so that you're not just passing your time into oblivion. My dad was a tradesman. He was a welder, and a very good one. I can't pass a bench anywhere in the city without looking at the welds and analyzing them, and I'm not even a welder. You see, I, like many of my friends, fucked around in my 20s. Like, I just blew off the time. I chose not to go to college because most of my interest, I felt like it might have been a waste of my income and my debt, because I was already aware of what was happening to the schooling system, and that was 16, 17 years ago. I was interested in art, and the idea of going into debt to go to some art university or some university's program for art seemed about ridiculous. And I believe that if you want to be autodidactic, you can teach yourself anything. I truly believe that. So I put my head to it. You have to be motivated and have the drive and the will. And by the time that boat arrived in my life, sadly, I was already in my 30s. A lot of things have changed for me since I came to Raleigh. What has quickly become 13 years has been some of the most developmentally strong, character building time of my life. When I first came to Raleigh, I spent a lot of time downtown, hanging out in the bar scene, going to a lot of shows, doing the things young people do. Some of the best memories, the most heartfelt memories that I have. But Raleigh's a changing place. I've grown up being here more than I probably had in the decade before. I started taking responsibility for some of the decisions I've made. I processed the grief of some situations that I had to go through. I fell in love with the love of my life. I've gone after my art journey and started this YouTube channel. I've changed some of my habits in order to better embody the values, ethics, and morals that I want to embody as a person. My parents were great examples of knowing that, yeah, you'll fail most of the time, but if you strive for those sorts of characteristics, you can really improve yourself and change yourself into a better person, a more respectable person, a person of integrity. But while going through this entire process, some of the places that I used to love to frequent have been purchased and bought out and destroyed, ruined to the ground and built back up. Places like the alley, the bowling alley on Hillsborough Street, Kathmandu, East Village Grill, Sadlack's Heroes, Subconscious. There's really too many to name. But Raleigh's a blooming and developing city, and what they've done to the old college town is get rid of those semblances of independently owned businesses and bars, clean up the image of the downtown college area, and bring in large corporate holdings. The bowling alley is now a Target. There's a Taco Bell cantina. A lot of these buildings are being torn down to make way for new high-rises and condo and apartment style living, which they like to sell as affordable housing, although the price of living, I imagine, not only here in Raleigh, but whatever city you're in, if you're in the United States, cost of living is going up. And I don't know that everybody who's from Raleigh can afford to stay in Raleigh. It's kind of a tragic story. Recently, it was suggested to me by my wife that I might want to capture some of these old buildings in some of my art. What a phenomenal idea. I hadn't even considered it, and that seems quite foolish to me now as I sit here. A couple months ago, I was able to put some of my artworks into an art show at the Berkeley Bar downtown. The Berkeley is one of those Raleigh institutions, like Mitch's Tavern or the Players Retreat. Immediately upon the suggestion of doing artworks based on those places, ideas came to my mind. The Berkeley is an old building, and the ownership of the actual cafe has changed hands a few times. It was kind of known Sadlack's had become the Berkeley. They like to call themselves a dive bar, but I don't really think of them as a dive bar. It's just an older building. They always make you feel welcome. You run into people that you know from the city. You grab a good bite to eat, try out the soup of the day. Maybe you'll catch some music there. The way the building's actually looked has changed a little bit over time. Definitely the block that it's on, and I wanted to capture some of that in these paintings. It feels weird to watch the buildings that you used to know disappear. Back in 2008, I took a friend of mine out to a place that I hadn't been in years, a place that I had lived in when I attended elementary school in about the 4th grade. I have such magical memories of the playground at the elementary school and the way the hallways looked in the cafeteria. Imagine my surprise when we show up and suddenly it felt so small. Every piece of equipment on the playground didn't feel like the gargantuan monster that it used to be, because time had changed things. My mind had changed. My evolution and understanding of what size was and my size into comparison had greatly changed. I wanted these to be more expressive, to feel like something out of a sketchbook. It also gave me an opportunity to work with watercolors again and to try to improve my skill in that medium. I tried to remember the fundamentals, working light to dark, the steps of wet into wet technique, making sure to use a hard lead pencil to do my sketch. I also wanted to capture my emotions around the subject matter by kind of letting my strokes be loose and interpretive, my compositions to be quirky and engaging, but not necessarily rigid and structured. I started off with the hard lead pencil, as you'll see in all of these paintings, and then gradually went into some fine liners that I made sure are waterproof and archival, and began applying those for extra detail, making sure my focus is where I'd like my focus to be, and trying to choose which colors best match what I feel and what I see when I look at the Berkeley. The first one of these drawings took me a little bit to get into the mode of doing it. This is actually a part of the Berkeley that is no longer part of the Berkeley. They had kind of commandeered the space that was a business next to them and turned it into a stage where you could see live acts from the community. A lot of people remember that about the Berkeley. A lot of people loved seeing shows there and playing shows there.
I could cavalcade a friendless space.
I wanted to capture that moment of just seeing some local person out there strumming their guitar under the hot, bright stage lights. Once I felt like that piece was completed and I got to a good stopping point, I put down my pens and my watercolors and decided to go on to another one. This time I wanted to go into my second drawing, going back in the timeline of the Berkeley a little bit and giving an outside view of the building. The building has a certain look to it, a feel to it. And at one time it had this big blue awning on the front of it. It felt retro, like you were pulling up to a brownstone in New York City. I wanted to capture its quirks, its color scheme, the character of the apartments above it, even the ceiling fan.
That was the one right there.
Yeah, I like it. And I really love the leg lamp from Christmas Story. It's iconic. And it was time to move into the final piece. The Berkeley used to have a sign that adorned the outside of the building. And if you were heading east into the city, you would approach the Berkeley, you'd be able to see it, the building next to it, and down the street, the RBC Center and the BB&T building. And I wanted to catch that layout. Now, I'm not a master of composition, and to be honest, I see some errors in my original sketch, but I love the way this turned out. After some criticism that it was hard to read from a distance, I wanted to make sure to make the sign that says Berkeley Cafe stand out the most. I chose to put the most amount of detail in the actual side of the Berkeley because it is the main subject of the image, just as your eyes do when you look at something. You may not realize that, but that's how your eyes work. Let's let the rest of this drawing play out, and I'll catch up with you here in a minute.
Seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I'm not falling, I'll push all my chips and call all in. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling. I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows, and we're all going life. Still nobody knows, but I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. Back a year ago.
Yeah, so there you go. That's the 3 paintings I did. I have them right here in my hand, completed. I'll need to take the time to matte and frame them, but I think they look pretty cool. And I think it would be cool to make prints of these. Maybe I could interest patrons of the bar into purchasing a copy of them to kind of memorialize the building as it's already been sold. The deal is done, and in a short amount of time, it will either be gutted and retrofitted into something else, or razed to the ground and turned into god-awful luxury apartments for affordable housing. I don't want to get into it. The fact that the college bars and hangouts of the old days of Raleigh are disappearing motivated me to get into this project. I do hope at some time to do some more pieces based on parts of the Berkeley. I think in a future video, I'm going to do a similar thing about the Players Retreat. You may remember, if you look into my channel's history, that I think like the first 8 videos on my channel or something like that were about me doing the chalkboard for the specials at the Players Retreat. The bar has changed there too. It has evolved. It has already tried to become more hip and trendy. And I want to capture that nostalgic feeling of times gone by before the city grew into its current adolescence, before all the never-ending construction on the highways and on the back roads, before the skyrocketing prices. Maybe I'm nostalgic for a time that doesn't exist anymore, and that's fine. But it reminds me of where I've come from, what I've seen and what I've experienced. And if I can even convey that to one other person so that they can feel something and it reminds them of a place and a time in their past, then I think I've done my job as an artist. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, give it a thumbs up. I don't want to hold you guys anymore. Leave a comment if you have any ideas for future videos and tell me what you think about your own town. What are you nostalgic for? Make sure to check out my website at charleshancockcreations.com. If you're interested in a commission or anything, you can just let me know about that there on my site or DM me. Check out my other social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, guys, life is what you create. So create something awesome.